Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are at the final chat of our modern May, and we are going to be discussing intriguing mechanics. So last time we talked about intrigue games. Now we're talking about mechanics you can implement in the game to help facilitate that. And we touched a tiny bit on it before in our other chat, but we're going to get into a few more specific things that you can use and tweak and play with in your games. So before we get into that, announcements, always less than 5 minutes for my part, and when there's only two of us here for the most part. So you can time us.
Get it done.
Yeah, here we go. I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads. We are currently going towards $100 worth of support per month, and we're trying to reach that. So if you want to help us do that, you can support at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals, as well as contacting directly if you prefer to. Any support at any level on those get you access to our Discord, where we discuss different things we're doing, put out feelers on what type of content or the different types of content coming up that you'd like to see, as well as sharing any content and printable materials or PDF materials that we make. I believe I mentioned in the second chat of this one, which was Modern Magical Theory of this month, and I'll mention it again here, that if everything goes according to plan, the very, 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 absolute, not even beta of the Adventure Academia should be final typed up fall of 2024. So we're working our way towards that, and that would be something, as an example, that we would release that would actually be a full-on little set of adventures. We're going to tweak it some more in the final versions and bulk it out some, but you can use it to help your kids practice math and do different things like that. So, and improve their reading skills and such. So that's what we have as far as the Inn of Planar Crossroads. Our not quite sister channel, more like buddy channel, I guess, Avenue Studios.
Yeah, Buddy Cop, that's another interesting.
Buddy Cop. I'm the straight lace guy, I guess.
I can do chaos, that's fine. Hey everybody, Dan from Avenue Studios. Really excited to be here. We, of course, are on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you find your podcasts. And the biggest thing we are doing now is live streaming Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. And for these theme month collaborations, we build a one-shot in Foundry virtual tabletop based on the discussions we have each month with these themes, and try to incorporate some of the things we talk about into that one-shot. And then we play test it at the end of the month. And, of course, our supporters through Locals and Patreon get entered into a raffle to play in that live stream playtest. And then after that, those modules will be available on the Forge for anyone to use and try out these one-shots based on each of the theme months. And, of course, if you've already gotten to some of those, let me know in the comments below if you've tried it out or what you've done with March of the Mechs or April Arcanum. And now we're into Modern May, so I'm really looking forward to wrapping up this discussion and getting into Forest Forge, because we haven't done that yet as of recording. So soon.
There you go. Yeah,
that's me.
All right. Yeah, we're burning through these themed collaborations. It's working out all right this year so far. We'll have to see what happens for next year. We'll at least do all the way through February, because that's when because we start on the Inn of Planar Crossroads. We start our years in spring, where all years should start, in my opinion. But we're past the announcements now. What do we got as a spotlight, Levi?
I will be spotlighting a Squirrel Plays, where a squirrel talks to you about TTRPGs.
Yeah. If that sounds fascinating, go check it out.
And maybe eventually a Squirrel Plays will make his little Squirrel TTRPG system.
That would be hilarious. So
Yeah.
if you go
It's
over
apparently
there,
in the works.
if you go over there, comment on one of his videos that the End of Planar Crossroads sent you, and that they want to play a game in his Squirrel TTRPG. That would be fun. So, all right. We're trying to get through this one fairly quickly because these guys are fading on me fast. It's almost midnight where they are. So, let's go ahead and get into this, boys, so we can get you guys to bed. I'll start us off and get the ball rolling. Unless you guys want, one of you guys want to go first, I'll start us off.
Go ahead,
I
boss.
trust you.
Okay. So, you travelers and viewers can sit down by the hearth, warm yourselves by the fire, and grab your preferred beverage as we begin to discuss intriguing mechanics. So, in your intrigue games, it is good to have ways to track different things. And so there are a few mechanics that work really well for intrigue games. Whether you're playing something like Dick Tracy, Supernatural, Supernatural-esque, the intrigue games, whatever. And I think Levi brought up a good one, which was using index cards for your clues. If you're doing like a detective story, or even a story that's not a detective story, more like a spy story or something like that, you can still use those index cards to keep track of clues or connections. And considering the theming, it would really be cool if you had like a conspiracy theory board that your group kept, even if it was a digital one, like on a separate screen in your TTRPG VTT of choice, and they just drew little lines and connections to all the different, they wrote something down. That would be
cool.
pretty funny, especially if you're going to dive into that conspiracy theory, which was a type of game that we talked about before. But having a way to track those things, that's important. It is important also to incorporate resource management, which those clues can kind of satisfy that. But that is also important for those spy games if your gadgets are just one use. Or if you're going to mix in magic, making sure that the magic isn't so powerful that it starts to overpower the challenge, you would need to do resource management for that magic. So those are ways you can do that. And if you're curious about mixing magic into the modern setting, you can go back to our second chat, which was Modern Magical Theory. Let me see. There's also magical restrictions, which we mentioned in our last one. Different things like a courtrooms and stuff like that. If you want to do a courtroom drama, there will be magical restrictions in that for sure. And I don't remember what I meant by that note, but there's another note on there for chases. Incorporating chases and chase mechanics into your game is also fun for these type of intrigue situations. So those are some pointers that we can use to start to bounce off of. So what do you guys think about some of those?
Chases is really cool. I didn't even think about that. The one thing I was thinking about that one of the reasons I love intrigue games too is that it does you can utilize a lot of different skills because you're going to need that social skill character, or at least people to have that social skill to talk with people, to either interrogate or to, talk their way into places. So that giving, I think I heard the advice was like, always have 3 clues that are in different ways to get to those clues that all lead to the same next step or whatever. Which allows for the different players, there's somebody who's just going to brute force through it, or there's someone that's going to talk their way into it or think their way through it. There's a lot of different aspects of that within these intrigue games that you really try to set up your game so that everyone can utilize their special skill and also utilize some of the stuff that sometimes gets lost, like the social skills. and the investigation type roles. Try to have it so they're not always defaulting to roll perception. I look around. Okay, cast detect magic, and that solves everything. Because I think in these, especially, Adam, you were kind of getting to it too, is the magic annulment sort of stuff that, like, if there's secrets being hidden in a world where there is some kind of magic or tech, people are gonna have ways to counteract that, and that not to like hide it from the players, but have it be an aspect that they can engage with. And now you have to have someone who can disable that, or someone notices it, but you got to get through that now without it. Like, there's a clue in the drawer, but it's magically protected, and if you don't break the magic properly, it's going to burn up all the clues inside. Having it doesn't have to be this stop, but it's just the next challenge.
Right. And presenting non-combat challenges is what you're going for. Intrigue games benefit from having those non-combat challenges even more than regular games do. So
yeah, I think this very last point you just made, contemplate for an intrigue game not doing any, like, so for various things a fight might happen, right? There is a point that if it's like, this is an intrigue game, if you got the drop on that person, you won. It, like, right?
As far as
you
combat?
rolled stealth. Yeah, you rolled stealth, and because you got a good enough stealth and you had the right other situations, you have taken that person out. Like, there is not a combat now. Like, we are an intrigue game.
Right.
If the narrative setup is correct, you have won or lost combat entirely based on that.
That's really interesting. That would go really well in my mind with it. I mean, you could do it anywhere, but Spy World would really work for that too.
Right.
Spies don't want to be in combat. They need to take them out.
Right.
Right. Well, and also in spy movies and, like, Dishonored, it's a game I played a lot. If you sneak up, they're dead. They're just Assassin's Creed. Like, you have to fight if you messed up.
That's a good one. Yeah.
But I would even just say that if you've messed up, you don't win anymore. You now need to make skill checks to leave and survive.
You see that in a lot of games like that. Taking something a bit more cartoony, there's the Sly Cooper games that were on the PS2. Well, they were on multiple systems, but the Sly Cooper games were very much you sneak around to, I guess Thief games fall under this idea too. So heist games and stuff, which is one we didn't touch on the last time. So heist games added this time. Those really benefit from that non-combat. And if you play the Sly Cooper games, you realize that getting caught is basically you have to restart the level. You can hide, maybe, but once they catch you, the guards caught you. That's it. And as long as you've got player buy-in for that, it's not a problem. So otherwise they're going to want to try and fight their way out. And
this isn't like you spring it on them. This is, you're like, hey, I'm running an intrigue game. In my intrigue game, if you want to beat someone in a fight, you need to have gotten the drop on them. You need to have convinced them you are a non-threat. You need to have poisoned a drink. I don't care how it happens, but if both you and the other person knows they're in a fight, depending on the situation, maybe you knock out the first guy, but reinforcements are called.
Right. And this is why
you're not going to win that one.
Yeah. And this is why you see in a lot of intrigue shows, there's the bruiser that's part of the group. And he's the thug or the There's actually a thug class in Pathfinder 1E that's a variation on the rogue that is basically just that, a thug. And they're part of the group, but their role in the group is to be the muscle. That's their role in the group. This is really good for like a the roles and stuff like that are really good for heist games again, or games where you have spy games have benefited from this in the sense that you got your gadget guy, you got this guy, and you got that guy. And really, I suppose you could, with all the classes you have access to, have each person being a part of it. So a part of the team. And then, so one of the players can play if you're using a certain, like a Pathfinder 2e or 1e or whatever it was, or 5e of D&D, the artificer or the inventor classes and stuff like that, the various inventor classes, having someone play that is basically having a Q in the group. I mean, a Q or an M, whatever the letter was that they had for him.
I mean, Q was, I'm pretty sure, the tech person in James Bond.
Yeah. See, I was throwing myself off because I was thinking, I said Q, but then I thought of Star Trek. So I was like, no, that's not the right Q. That's not the right Q. So Q and the techie guy, you could make it where they're like a mobile unit for this. Usually they're working for governments, spies and such like that. So you could do that because we're talking in like a modern setting at the moment. So an intrigue game in a modern setting, you could do that. You could do political intrigue, but the problem with doing, at least from my perspective, the problem with doing a political intrigue, a courtly type of intrigue in a modern setting, is that most politicians, is how it's worked out now, they're going to be looking at what's best for them instead of what's best for, like in the non-modern setting, the family or something along that line. You could do an organized crime game that worked like an intrigue game and still have that type of courtly intrigue, because there's the different families divvying up parts of the city and stuff like that. The Yakuza, or you can do the interacting with the different things along that line. That's a way you could play it. But you couldn't, it would be more difficult to do that in a outright politician type of game, at least from my perspective. I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, but
well, I mean, you start off with blackmail, with things things that might prevent them from getting reelected, like conveniently closing specific voting areas in the right areas at the right time, paying off a surveyor to like mess with districts in a weird way, right? Like you can get into it, right? You just assume, right, that you were playing in a selfish world and you just start playing dirtier.
Right. Well, what I mean is, if each of the players are playing a politician, then I don't know that it's going to be much of a fun game. But if
I misunderstood how you meant this. I was imagining a group of players who are working to influence existing politicians.
Okay, so you're still on the organized crime part. So politicians the same way.
So I'm sorry, but lobbyists are not technically criminals, but they're doing this stuff. It's not illegal.
Right.
It doesn't have to be organized crime to feel like it.
Well, I suppose definition of crime would be a thing. But anyway, it's getting real. We're trying to stay engaged.
Yeah.
Now, right, if you were doing, what you would basically have to do is you would have to be like, as part of building your politician, give me interesting motivations.
Right.
If you don't have interesting motivations, like, you have to have at least a couple passion projects. If you don't, reroll. That one is just one of the other NPC politicians. Thanks for giving me a name.
Yep.
So,
if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm
not sure that there's a big demand for playing out politics in a game. But
but you asked.
Yeah, I know. So I was like, huh. I think there's ways to do it. I think if you're going to do it, it would be even better if it was like you were doing like, we're gonna get this guy elected. Maybe you're the campaign team. You're a bureaucrat. That would be a way to do it. So you had the group is part of the bureaucracy. They're part of running the re-election campaign or the election campaign for this politician. And so they're having to clean up his dirty stuff. They're having to make sure people are paid. They're having to make sure that the connections are made with those contributing to his campaign. They got to make sure all the right people are invited to his next function. So
yeah. And then specifically, some of the people who are invited, because if you don't invite them, you will piss them off, find good reasons to not show up. So not in the, like, killing them, but in the, like...
Yeah, in the non-violent way. But this is how you make this type of game fun. I figured it out. Okay? You do what we did with the other game, with the modern magical theory stuff. They're trying to... This dragon is running for re-election. Okay, and these are players trying to make sure that this dragon, they're all kobolds trying to make sure that this dragon gets re-elected. So, re-elected, or whatever you want to say, however weird or crazy you want to make it. And so they're passing out appropriate amounts of golds to certain people. They're making sure certain people are invited to the dragon's functions. You've got to invite the other dragons of the different colors, because if you don't, they're going to get fussy. But you don't want to invite too many, because then you look like you're just pandering to everybody. So you got to pick the right dragons to invite, and so on and so forth.
I like the idea that this is not someone who's reelected, but is part of an independent party, because that's a bigger uphill battle to have to work through, and that sounds more exciting as a narrative.
Yep. So there you go. If I was going to play in a political campaign type of game, it would have to have magic fantasy stuff in it, because I ain't doing no real life. I don't like that. Yeah. So
that's funny though. The kobolds and the dragon is great. That's
the kobolds would be they're the perfect ones to do it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So there you go. And I just have this image of goblins literally stuffing ballots into a ballot box. It's like
yeah.
And then someone comes in and they just stop for a second. And they just close it back. So, there you go.
I love it.
Funny stuff for your game. Taking real world stuff and just turning it silly is an all right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a way you can work the mechanics on it, and then you can have like a popularity polls going up and down based upon how well their performance are going. And so by the end of a few sessions, you have the actual election night. And that can be a way you can work that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if you wanted to arc that, it would be like, all right, you're going to run for town mayor. You're going to run for governor. And like each arc. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So the dragon starts out young. Cool. And then you play a fresh set of kobolds each campaign, but maybe they're from the same clutch as this other kobold. It doesn't really matter. Your PCs can be new, because the unifying factor is the dragon. So this young dragon starts off as a mayor. Several years go by, a decade or two. He runs for, state Congress, and he runs for, depending on what type of government you want to work in this fictional thing. So you can go up and up and up and up until you've finally got him as President Dragon Supreme. And then there you go. So
I love it.
I just thinking of a dragon going, I'm the best dragon ever. I'm just letting you know right now. It's just like,
I'm not saying that. That's what people say.
that's what people tell me. That's what people tell me. I'm not saying it. That's what people tell me, that I'm the best dragon ever. And it doesn't matter what you think about Trump. That's funny. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, feels about right.
So,
I was thinking about, as you said, especially with the popularity poll thing too, I think as a general mechanic thing that I think works really well in these, especially trying to avoid combat, not necessarily avoid combat, but have less combat and do more outside of combat role stuff, is challenge events. Is a really, I have found it to be a very useful tool for covering larger swaths of time and letting the roles encompass a little bit more, especially if the players get into thinking outside the box. And I love the restriction in a challenge event of every round of it, you can't use, if you used your agility this time, you can't use it in the next round. So forcing the players, depending on how you set it up, to really think outside the box. It forces them to tap into some of their skills and also kind of resource manage their skills. And like, I think this round, what I want to do here is going to be harder. So I'm going to save my better stats for that. Maybe start with my low, or someone's just like, no, I'm going to get the best now and work my way down.
Right. Start the ball rolling.
I've really enjoyed that. And I think that could work well in these, especially also combining that with what we had talked about last time with the flashbacks and flash forwards, sort of playing with time. I think intrigue games, some of them could lend themselves well to that bouncing around in time, like we had talked about with the courtroom stuff. And then it's like the prosecutor makes the suggestion, okay, now we're jumping over to the other team. And challenge event, this is what you got to do. Can you get to that? I think challenge events are such a great tool to use for all of this, forcing everyone to use stats they might not always lean into. And then also it allows you to kind of cover a larger amount of time and actions, still rolling dice, still doing that important part of the game that we all love is math rocks. But, so I don't know. I that's what I was thinking as you talked about, because that popularity poll, perfect thing for a challenge event. Depending, each round, how's it going? How's this week going? What are you doing this week, particularly to get his poll numbers up?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone goes out and does it. You describe it. I think that's a lot of fun.
The only elections I'm worried about are the dragon elections. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. Well, yes. So that also challenge events, with the way it works for Open Legend and things like that, you can do those also with chases and different things along that line. So I believe in one of the previous chats, I'm not sure which of this year, but it was this year, we talked about chases and how they're implemented in Call of Cthulhu. There's like there's a point crawl, basically, line where you have, you start at the same, and then they start one ahead of you usually to make it, worth the chase, you might say. And so you're each doing certain things to get there, and you can make branches if you want to. You're trying to lead to the same end, but one branch might be an alleyway and one branch might not, so on and so forth, represent different challenge levels. And if you have just like this forked tree that comes back to a single point of escape or capture, then you build this little tree out and you can just do a point crawl across it with your chases, and then those challenge events are things you can do. And I like the way that you do it in Open Legend, because you can use different attributes than just agility to run really fast. You can you can reason out or logic out using this particular skill you have, and that would be using this attribute. Or you're using your agility this time, but you come up against a barrier, and so in the story you instead use your might the next time to move it out of the way and keep going, or something like that. Maybe they topple a cart in front of you, so you can throw it out of the way if you've got enough might. And that makes it easier for the next person behind you to move forward, or so on and so forth. So those chase mechanics are very useful in that sense too.
Mm-hmm. And just a side note. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Levi.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say a side note. It's more specific to Open Legend, but I think in any game that has like feats or traits too, I always throw out that you get advantage if you can spin me a tale that these feats apply to this role, even though they might be more combat oriented or something. Spin me a tale. Each feat that you can apply to the role, because it's just one role to cover a larger expanse, is an advantage. So players are starting to stack it up and seeing, or a perk or a flaw, bringing those into it. You can still incorporate all those aspects of the game into the challenge event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it forces the players to think creatively too, which I always enjoy seeing what they come up with.
And describe creatively, which is always really nice from the GM side to have someone else putting in some of the narrative linguistics, let's say, because a lot of times you have to be forming a better picture in your head than they are painting if you don't encourage it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do really like adding that in. I should say, for people who aren't as familiar with Open Legend, adding a couple of advantage onto a roll is nice, but is not as number breaking as advantages in D&D 5e.
Yes, thank you.
I should also say that on the note of using a decent number of different skills for a chase, if you look into the Pathfinder 2nd Edition chase rules, it actually goes into how different complications are dealt with by different skills.
Nice. That's cool.
So there you go. So chases, stuff like that. Let me see. We're at about 30-ish minutes. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Are there any other intriguing mechanics that can be used from you guys that you think of before we sign off?
Yes. While my brain is on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, a really fun one for this is the secret check. You find out your player's modifiers. They tell you that. You're like, oh, okay, cool. You know the DC in your head. You, on a little table where they can't see, you make a roll, you make a face, and then you tell them as much as their character knows. Did you stealth? Did you see it? Well, I made a roll, and you don't notice anything threatening in this room.
I like that.
So that's a way to do it.
It kind of leads back into what Levi was talking about last time too, with phrasing how you talk to the players and keeping up that suspense. And I think we all know this, but I'll throw it out too. Sometimes just rolling the dice and making a sound or a face,
they don't have to.
It doesn't mean anything. They
just
don't
play
even
with
know
your
it
math
means
rocks.
Nothing. Yeah, you've got them there. And also shout out for Foundry Virtual Tabletop, and I'm sure most virtual tabletops have it. There's the GM secret roles, but it still shows you on Foundry. I love it. It shows question marks. The GM rolled something. You can't see what it is. It's the same idea of. It's not really a mechanic thing, but
I heard that clickety clack, Jacob. I heard that clickety clack.
Yeah.
What's a clickety clack, Jacob?
What's happening? Nothing.
I was just rolling the color of their shirt.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to be lying.
No, it's just the color of their shirt. 1 through 5. So this. 6 through 10 is that. All right, what do you got, Dan, as a final thought?
Let's see. I think I want to... it's more of a shout out to that previous video where we talked about the flash forward, flashback mechanic idea, and we really fleshed that out. I say if you're thinking about that, check that out. And Powered by the Apocalypse. I have not gotten to play in it, but I've heard a lot of fun things about it. It's a potentially that kind of narrative storytelling could really work well in an intrigue style game and bouncing around in time. I like the idea. I'd like to experiment with that more, but comment below too if you've done that kind of gameplay where you're bouncing back and forth in the timeline to solve the problem, because I think intrigue lends itself very well to that type of play.
it can, that bouncing back and forth can allow your players to find solutions they may not have thought of at the time before, which can be, that's very helpful for players because usually the DMs had a lot longer to think about this than the players have. So they're trying to figure out what the DM's looking for or wanting or figuring out in less than half fractions of the time that the DM thought it up. So it's only fair to them in certain ways. All right. I guess that means we're to me. And I'm going to, for my final thought, I'm going to pull something. I'm going to build off of what Levi said and pull something from OSR type of setups where there were GMs who were behind a screen and the GM screen literally blocked them. The GM was behind something that the players couldn't see through. And anytime the players wanted to do something, they didn't roll. The GM rolled. They didn't. They never knew the rolls. They were just told the indications of what happened. The GM told the story to them as they were deciding what their characters wanted to do. And so if you're playing an intrigue game, especially a mystery or either a whodunit or howdunit, those types of things, that playing a game where the players never roll the dice, they never see the dice, can really build in without necessarily even meaning to, or without even necessarily, having to try to, it builds in that extra tension of, I don't know if I rolled good. I can't look at his face because he's behind the screen. That's even easier now because you can just turn your camera off on your VTT. The GM's invisible basically. And so he can see all of their faces, but they can't see his. Or, whatever gender, I don't care. And so you have this whole situation go on where the intrigue starts to permeate the entire situation. That it works really good for those more serious type of games of intrigue to not know. I still want to try it in some kind of mystery format or a game. So you got to have your character buy in, though. You got to have your players buy in.
Right, for sure. I'll just quick piggyback on that too. That like in Foundry, you can still, if you're playing virtual tabletop, could lend itself to that because you can still do the rolls, clicking your skill and clicking it. But I can't remember. I think it's a blind GM roll, so only the GM can see. You, the player, can't even see, even though you're the one that clicked the roll. The GM is the only one that can see the result, and you're left questioning. Jacob did it to us a lot in Outlaws of Alkenstar on our live streams, and it definitely adds tension. I like that though because then it still feels like the player's rolling it, right? Because you're the one that clicked the button.
Yeah.
But the GM's the only one. You, the player, can't even see what you rolled. So that's a bonus way to do it in a virtual tabletop that way too. And I can speak from experience that it keeps you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah. So piggybacking and then building off of Levi's, that's my final thought.
Beautiful.
And I think with that, we have come to the completion of Modern May, and we've covered a wide variety of subjects in Modern May, even within just the intrigue type of setting. So intrigue, it includes a lot, it turns out. So there you go, even if just looking at the modern. So that's what we have, I believe. Any real final things that need mentioned before we go, guys?
Nothing more than check out the Avenue Studios channel and Planar Crossroads. Of course, you're already here if you're watching this, so join the travelers. And if you think of it, hop over to our forest, see what we got going on there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Levi and Adam, for another great month of chats. Thanks for staying up, Levi.
Yeah, just a little tired.
I do.
All right, then. Remember, you can find us on YouTube or Rumble, depending on whichever one you want to use. The Interplanar Crossroads is also on BitChute, though we don't... It's weird. Numbers work weird on BitChute, because there's lots of watch numbers, but there's not... I think it's bots or something. I don't know. Don't know, don't care. It's a backup.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we have. We didn't. So if you get this far, you come to the end. I guess the comment of this one is, best dragon ever, or something like that. No. Dragon
It's
elections.
huge.
Oh, it's huge.
My fire
It's
is
huge. It's my fire is huge. There it is. My fire is huge. My fire is huge. That's not me. That's other people tell me. I don't know, but my fire is
They
huge.
mistook it for a volcano. Never seen one better.
They thought I was a volcano. They never saw one better. Thought I was a volcano. I tell you what, that's not what I say. That's what other people tell me. That's what other people tell me about me. Me, the best dragon ever. So, my fire is huge. So my fire is huge. My fire
That's
is
beautiful.
huge. Is the comment of that. So there you go. As always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Oh, man.
Okay, Trump Dragon was hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm picturing like a dragon with a Trump wig too.
That was too, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Trump dragon with the Trump wig, and he's making the lip thing too. Huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. That's not what I say. That's what everybody tells me. It's huge.
We live in the clown timeline. That's for sure.
There, yeah.
Yep.
But there we go. We've got Modern May done.
Awesome.
Indeed, you do.
Thank you guys. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna have to go crash. I gotta teach 3-year-olds in the morning, so that'll be fun. Yay. Alright.
Mr. Dan,
Well-
why are you falling asleep, Mr. Dan?
I'll just be like, just eat your gummy bears and color a picture or something.
Eat your gummy bears and color your Easter egg picture.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Dan,
Alright.
what do gummy bears have to do with the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Turned into a South Park character.
It did
But
turn
Mr.
into
Dan-
something.
What do gummy bears have to do with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Shut up and eat your gummy bears.
Yep.
Shut up,
You
Jimmy.
don't know yet. You'll learn when you're older.
You just said it's
I didn't-
it's classic one. Ask your parents.
Yeah, classic.
Mom, Dad,
you know-
Daddy told me to. Mr. Dan told me to ask you what gummy bears have to do with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Just as the bears hibernate,
Just
Well done.
the bears saved it.
Oh man. All right, boys. Have a good night.
Yep.
See you for the
too.
next one.
Peace.
Night, y'all.
Very well.